Welcome to qiphyedu. Today we'll be looking at economics A2 level, paper 31, October-November 2022. Alright, let's start. Okay, so for the first question, it says in an economy, no one can be made better off without making someone else worse off, which is Pareto optimality. And Pareto optimality is related to allocative efficiency. So what can we deduce from this? Let's look at the four options. A says individuals are the best judges of their own well-being. B, individuals can be relied upon to behave rationally. C, the distribution of income is socially optimal. And D, the economy's resources are allocated efficiently. Okay, so A, individuals are the best judges of their own well-being. This is not correlated with the sentence on top, so B is not correct. B, it says individuals can be relied upon to behave rationally, which is also not correct. C says the distribution of income is socially optimal. In this society, it is not socially optimal. In fact, there is income inequality, and it does not correlate with the first sentence. So C is also not correct. So answer has to be D. The economy's resources are allocated efficiently. Number 2, the diagram shows the costs and benefits of producing a good. The good has negative externalities in production and positive externalities in consumption. The free market equilibrium is at point X. So what is the new equilibrium point? So if let's say this good has positive externalities in consumption, this means that the marginal social benefit must be more than the marginal private benefit. And then negative externalities in production, which should be when your marginal social cost is more than your marginal private costs. Alright, so if let's say the good has positive externalities in consumption, so that means the curve will shift to the right from its original point from MPB to MSB1. And then the good has negative externalities, meaning that the marginal social cost would be more than the marginal private cost, so this has to be here. Therefore, answer is B. Number 3, the Airports Commission in the UK recommended an expansion of Airport X rather than Airport Y. In considering the social costs and benefits of this decision, what will be taken into account when calculating the external costs? Okay, so when you do an expansion of an airport, you need to consider many things. And now we're talking about external costs. So therefore, we need to talk about people living outside or close to the airport. Therefore, if you are talking about people living outside the airport, we are talking about residents, we are talking about shop lots, we are talking about buildings, we are talking about towns, etc., etc., etc. So let's look at the four options. A says the additional noise pollution suffered by residents local to Airport X. And then B is basically the financial loss suffered by airlines operating at Airport Y. And C, the increase in profits of the firm operating Airport X. And D, the monetary cost of the construction to expand Airport X. Okay, so let's take a look from A to D and see why each is wrong and why one of them will be correct. A says the additional noise pollution suffered by residents local to Airport X, which means that when you expand the airport, you are actually catering to more airplanes. When you're catering to more airplanes, this will result in more noise emitted from the airplanes because of the engines of these airplanes, and the fact that there's an increase in the crowd also makes for more noise in certain circumstances, and also probably more costs. So therefore, this is actually a marginal social cost higher than marginal personal cost condition. That's why the additional marginal private cost more than marginal social cost situation. Therefore, it is a negative consumption externality. Therefore, A is correct. B, the financial loss suffered by airlines operating at Airport Y. Financial loss suffered by airlines operating at Airport Y is not an external cost. In fact, it is a private cost. So when you operate an airline at that particular airport, this means that it is not people that are benefiting or suffering. These people are not from inside the airport, they're from outside the airport when we talk about external costs. So this is internal costs. Therefore, internal as in since the airlines are in the airport itself, it's not part of external costs. So B is not correct. C, the increase in profits of the firm. So this is basically marginal private benefit. Or basically when there's an increase in profits, this means that basically it's not an external cost. So C is not correct. And D, the monetary cost of the construction to expand airport access one would be internal cost as well. So D is not correct. Answer is A. Question 4, what is the correct statement of the equimarginal utility rule? Alright, so equimarginal utility rule, A says the marginal utility of X must equal the marginal utility of Y. This is not correct. The equimarginal utility rule is calculated like this. Your marginal utility of X must be divided by the price of X, N equals to marginal utility of Y divided by the price of Y. This is why A is not correct. B, the marginal utility of X divided by the price of X must equal the marginal utility of Y divided by the price of Y. So yep, this is correct. And C, the marginal utility of X divided by the price of Y must equal to the marginal utility of Y divided by the price of Y. So you can see the difference between B and C is basically when you look at the first few phrases, it says the marginal utility of X divided by the price of X, which is this thing. However, if you look at C, it says marginal utility of X divided by the price of Y equal the marginal utility of Y divided by the price of Y. So you're basically just dividing the same price. We are calculating it in terms of marginal utility for one good divided by the price of that good instead of the price of the other good. So C is not correct. And D, the price of X must equal to the price of Y, is not correct. Answer is B. Question 5, which statement is correct? A, it says a budget line shows the combination of two goods which can be bought with a given income. Now, the budget line is basically something like the PPC. Instead of producing, it's consuming. So it's basically based on the income of that person. PPC, on the other hand, is given the current state of the economy, the amount of available resources, how many products we can produce. Like, let's say I can produce like 500 goods of A, maybe 500 goods of B. And let's say I try to increase my production of good A, then I may have to sacrifice a bit of good B, right? Something like this, something along the lines of this. But then here in this case, it's your income purchasing two goods, but what amount would that be? So for number 5, A is correct. For B, it says a budget line shows the combination of two goods which a consumer wants to buy. This is less accurate. Now, a consumer may want to buy two goods, but the thing is, if you're talking about budget line, you're talking about your own budget, your own, like the total amount of money that you have in order to spend on these particular two goods. So yes, it may be showing the combination of two goods that the consumer wants to buy, but it also shows the limit to what the consumer can buy, assuming that you only have this specific amount of salary. So B is not correct because it's less accurate than because it's less accurate than A. And C says a budget line shows the difference between income and expenditure, which is not correct. Because the budget line, as I mentioned before, it shows the two possible combinations of goods that a consumer want to buy given his or her income. And D, a budget line shows the maximum potential output of two goods with given resources. This one clearly states that it is a PPC. So D is not correct, so answer is B. Question 6, in the diagram, YL and YM show two budget lines for a consumer of product X when its price changes. IC1 and IC2 are two indifference curves representing the consumer's preferences between product X and spending on other goods. What is not a valid statement? Alright, so A says product X must be a given good since the consumer spends more on other goods after the price change. So you can see that after the price change, spending on other goods increase. The problem though is that when the price increases, it didn't increase by a whole lot. So if it didn't increase by a whole lot, like shifting the IC curve directly to the top like this, the quantity does not decrease. The quantity increases. So you can see that the quantity increases despite the fact that spending on other goods actually increase. So to say that product X must be a given good since the consumer spends more on other goods after the price change is incorrect. And B says the consumer has greater satisfaction at E2 than at E1. This is correct because as you can see, you can purchase more at a higher income. So of course B is correct. And C, the price of other goods are assumed to be held constant when drawing the budget lines, which is correct, because if the prices are different, then by using this graph to represent the different prices, it's definitely not going to make it accurate. And D, the shift from YL to YM represents a fall in the price of product X, because from YL, this means that you can only purchase, like, let's say 200 quantity of X, but then if you move to M, you can purchase either the same quantity of Y, but maybe 300 plus 300, like let's say a total of 500 amount of goods. Therefore, the price drops. So D is correct as well. So the answer that's not correct is A. It is not a given good because consumers spend more on other goods after the price change. Okay. Question 7, the list provides characteristics of the market in which firm X operates. So firms in the market spend a lot of money on advertising. Firms in the market experience a high level of uncertainty. Startup costs for new firms entering the market are relatively high, and the largest 5 firms in the market control 85% of total sales. So let's just draw some keywords. Largest 5 firms, startup costs relatively high, advertising, high level uncertainty. Okay, so the fact that it says startup costs for new firms entering the market relatively high means that it's not monopolistic competition and perfect competition. So B and D are out. So you only have 2 options, monopoly and oligopoly. Now, if it's a monopoly, this means that there's only one firm, but it says the largest 5 firms. Therefore, when it says the largest 5 firms, this means that it's not only one firm that is operating the market. So A is incorrect. So answer is C. Question 8, what explains why in long-run equilibrium in monopolistic competition, firms only make normal profits? Okay, so in monopolistic competition, there are many firms, but all these different firms, they sell different types of goods. In the short run, you can make abnormal profit, but in the long run, you typically can only make normal profits. And this has to do with the fact that there are many firms that enter the market. And when there are many firms entering the market, this means that despite the fact that your prices are despite the fact that your products are differentiated, that doesn't mean that people would just compete based on the fact that you're the only one who sell this product. Like, because there's many firms, it makes it more difficult for your product to be differentiated completely, and plus the fact that there are so many firms, increasing options available. Therefore, it would result in the fact that you have to drop prices in order to allow for other people to purchase your products. So A, it says consumer resistance, which is not correct. B, it says decreasing returns to scale, which is not correct. This is monopolistic competition. This has nothing to do with economics of scale. And C, differentiated products. If it's really because of that, then of course it will be earning an abnormal profit, not normal profit. So it has to do with the fact that there's freedom of entry and exit. So you have you allowing more firms into the market, allowing firms to only make a normal profit in the long run. So it says D. Question 9, the diagram shows 4 possible output levels of a firm. At its current level of output, the firm's product has a price elasticity of demand of exactly -1. At which output is the firm selling? Okay, so you can ignore all the marginal cost and average cost and even the marginal revenue. Just have to look at this line. So the AR line, if you remember from AS, the position that's slightly above the middle point of the demand curve would be where your PED is more than 1, and the one below is when the PED is less than 1, and then the center point is where PED equals to 1. Therefore, the answer for this, if you draw one line down, has to be B, so answer is B. Question 10, which conditions enable price discrimination? Okay, price discrimination is basically when a few separate products, there are different prices. Like, let's say, for example, originally you could get this product for, let's say, $5, but in that particular area it sells that product for maybe $7 or $8, right? So let's look at the 3 conditions. Number 1, it says the firm can separate the total market into different submarkets, and 2, there are different price elasticity of demand in each separate submarket. And 3, the marginal revenue curve is the same in each separate market. Okay, so in price discrimination, yes, the firm can separate the total market into different submarkets. And 2, there are different price elasticity of demand in each separate submarket, which is also correct. But 3, it says the marginal revenue curve is the same in each separate market, which is incorrect, because there's no way that the marginal revenue curve is the same in each separate market. It has to be different. Right? When it comes to price discrimination, so answer is 1 and 2. Answer is A. Question 11, the diagram shows a firm producing at Q1 on short-run average costs SRAC1. Which strategy will achieve the greatest reduction in average cost at this output? So ignore the LRAC for a moment and let's look at SRAC. So when we look at SRAC, you could increase factor production. When you increase factor production, you could when you increase factor production, you could increase total amount available. By doing so, you'll realize that you'll be able to increase your production and at the same time maximizing your efficiency, therefore reducing average cost. So okay, we can look back at the LRAC. So when we look back at the LRAC, you see that when you increase production quantity, you'll shift downwards and your cost would increase. So C and D is wrong because it's not reduced but increased. So not only do we have to increase our fixed factors of production, we also have to increase our variable factors of production. So answer is B. Question 12, which change will make it easier for a cartel to operate effectively? Okay, so for number 12, A says an increase in competition, which is not correct. In fact, for cartels to operate effectively, there should be no competition, because for all firms for all countries to enter this cartel, for the same industry, this will actually help to ensure that the cartel can operate effectively for their given price. If there's competition, it's difficult. B says an increase in the number of firms, it's better for them to decrease it in order to control it properly. And C says an increase in the range of products, so it has to be one specific or two specific products. So for example, petrol prices could be controlled if, let's say, it's only specifically, if they're only managing petrol. So C is also not correct. And D says an increase in the stability of the market for its products, so answer is D. Question 13, some workers in a low-paid job decides to work longer hours to increase their disposable income. However, this decision reduces state-provided benefits, leaving them worse off. And what does this describe? Okay, so this is part of unemployment, welfare benefits. So let's say I only earn like 1,500 per month, and now I decided to do overtime work. So if I do overtime work one day, I could probably earn like maybe an additional 20 ringgit. When I earn an additional 20 ringgit, let's say I work for 20 days, I could get 400 ringgit. So my total salary would be, let's say, 1,900. However, if let's say I earn 1,900, maybe let's say the government decides that, okay, for people who are between with a salary of between 1,500 to, let's say, 1,800, each person can get like maybe an additional welfare benefit of, let's say, 600 ringgit. So in that sense, if let's say you're earning 1,500 and then you get 600, you get 2,100 ringgit. But if this is the case, you're actually losing out 200 ringgit. So this is actually a trap of poverty, because if you were to earn this specific amount, but then it actually makes you worse off in the long run, because of the fact that you have reduced state-provided benefits. You could probably get more with the state-provided benefits when you earn less. So to this is a poverty trap. It's not a debt trap. A debt trap is when you can't pay the debt because of high interest rates. And B, liquidity trap is also not correct, because this is not converting cash into bonds. And C, poverty trap is correct, and D is not unemployment trap, which is this is not part of unemployment trap. This is poverty trap. So answer is C. You're making yourself worse off by earning more. That's why it's considered a poverty trap. In question 14, what indicates that nationalization has taken place? A, says a firm buys supplies locally rather than from international sources. This is incorrect because even though you purchase from international sources or local resources, depending on which country you purchase it from, the firm is still, could be a firm that is private, could be a firm that is linked to the government. So to say that buying supplies locally would actually result in nationalization take place does not make sense. B, it says a firm moves from private ownership to state ownership. This is correct because instead of having private entities holding the company, it is now the government that takes hold of the firm. So yes, this is nationalization. And C, a firm restricts ownership of its shares to citizens of its own country. Therefore, for C, it is not correct because the fact that the firm restricts ownership of its shares to citizens of its own country means that that citizens can purchase shares of this company, which also correlates with the fact that the firm is a private firm. So even if you were to restrict it to only citizens of your own country, this doesn't stop it from still being a private firm to begin with. And D, a firm just sells to the domestic market from the international market. If let's say the product of that firm is price elastic in the international market, and you end up selling it to the domestic market where the demand could be price elastic, you're just making yourself worse off. So, and also this doesn't mean that nationalization has taken place because you're just switching markets, but you're not switching the owner of the company. So the thing here with nationalization is you're changing the owner of the company. Instead of having the private entity holding stocks for this particular company, it's now the government that's holding the stocks of this company. So answer is B. Question 15. Too many flights in the airline industry cause unnecessary damage to the environment, and which measure is most likely to result in the socially optimal number of flights? A, says a complete ban on flights removing all private and external costs, and B, greater deregulation of the global airline industry. C, publishing information to highlight the negative effects of flying on the environment, and D, the payment of a subsidy per passenger equal to the difference between the private and social benefit. So for A, it says a complete ban on flights removing all private and external costs. Realistically, this is not possible. There is no way you can ban all flights because you need flights to move people from one country to the other, and two, you need to have flights to ship, let's say, items from one place to another. As such, if let's say you were to completely ban flights, it would actually result in more private costs. Therefore, A is not correct. And B, greater deregulation of the global airline industry. If you were to deregulate, it will result in more airlines flying in, making it even worse for the environment. So B is not correct. And C, publishing information to highlight the negative effects on flying on the environment. This could be nudge theory. So yes, this is possible. And D, the payment of a subsidy per passenger equal to the difference between the private and social benefits. So this doesn't. If the fact that you're actually paying subsidy per passenger equal to the difference between private and social benefit means that you're actually wanting passengers to take the plane. So no, D is not correct. I'll say C. Question 16, the government is worried about the increasing monopsony power of employers in the wage bargaining process, and which policy combination is most likely to improve the wages and employment prospects of workers? Okay, so a government is worried about the single buyer of employers. So what do you need to do to improve the wages? Therefore, your trade union power must be strengthened. So C and D is wrong. And then for immigration controls, you must strengthen your immigration controls to prevent foreign workers from coming in, which would help the local workers to have better opportunity to have a higher wage, and the national minimum wage must also raise. So answer is B. Question 17, the diagram shows the labor market for fruit pickers in country X. And if the market was originally in equilibrium, what will happen to wages and employment if a minimum wage of W were imposed? Okay, so for W, if let's say the minimum wage is imposed, this means that you have to set that price regardless. Therefore, your average rate would increase to roughly around this point where it cuts itself here, and that means your quantity of laborers will increase, so employment rise, so AC is wrong. So your wages will also increase, so answer is D. Question 18, what would not be regarded as an example of a possible negative impact of rapid economic growth? So A, it says greater production could result in greater atmospheric pollution. This is an example of a possible negative impact. So A is correct. B, it says a higher level of income could cause a higher balance of trade deficit, which is possible. And C, increased AD could cause domestic inflation to increase, which is also a negative impact. And D, says increased GDP could generate greater tax rates. This is actually positive because government will have more tax revenue, so D is not correct. 19, how can GDP and market prices be calculated if GDP and factor cost is known? So if you want to calculate GDP, you will have to add your taxes, which is what the government earns. So CD is wrong. And then subtract subsidies because the government pays out subsidies, which would decrease the GDP. So let's say is B. Question 20, which combination indicates that GDP per capita is likely to be an accurate indicator of living standards in the country over time? So for question 20, your income distribution should be equal. And then there should be no hidden economy. So if they say the hidden economy is large, that means it's more inaccurate. Okay. Because this is per capita, which means that it's divided, so your income distribution must be equal in order to be accurate. So anything with unequal is wrong. And then this leaves us with C, where with the quality of goods and services produced improving. So the answer is C. Question 21, which statement about unemployment is correct? So let's look at the four options. A, says cyclical unemployment is caused by the occupational immobility of labor. B, says frictional unemployment is caused by a lack of information on jobs in the labor market. C, says structural unemployment is caused by a deficiency in aggregate demand. And D, voluntary unemployment is caused by variation in the demand for labor in the year. Okay, A, says cyclical unemployment is caused by occupational immobility. Now, cyclical unemployment is unemployment caused by economic recession. It has nothing to do with occupational immobility. So A is incorrect. Occupational immobility could be structural unemployment. Like in this place where, let's say in a rural area, I'm able to do, let's say, agricultural stuff. But then let's say the demand for rice has dropped, and then I'm out of job. And then instead people switch over to, let's say, processed foods. So now if let's say I were to go to a factory that process foods or something, then I would have to go to maybe the city center. So if I do that, this means that I would have to travel to the city center or stay in the city center, and I don't have money to do that. So this causes occupational immobility, and so that's why this is nothing to do with cyclical unemployment. And B, frictional unemployment is caused by a lack of information on jobs in the labor market, which is the reason why this is correct is because you can see that most people today, they would rather work in another country than their own country. For example, let's say most people in Malaysia may choose to work in Singapore, or they may choose to work in the European Union, or maybe the UK, and probably the US. The reason for that is because you can get a better salary there. However, there could be jobs in the labor market in the local country, in the country that may also yield a very high salary and does not require you to be unemployed. So B is correct because of that. And C, structural unemployment is caused by a deficiency in aggregate demand. Structural unemployment is caused by a change in technological processes. A deficiency in aggregate demand is basically cyclical unemployment. So C is incorrect because of this. And D, voluntary unemployment is caused by variations in the demand for labor in the year, which is incorrect. Voluntary unemployment is when you yourself do not want to work. In this case, when it says variation in the demand, this is involuntary unemployment, as in you're unemployed because of the fact that there are too many workers in this particular industry, or or let's say the company does not want to expand and they're losing out. Therefore, in order to save themselves from a bunch of debt, they decide to kick out some workers. So yeah, so it's not part of involuntary unemployment. It's not part of voluntary unemployment, but it's part of involuntary unemployment. So answer is B. Question 22. The graph shows the percentage unemployed in the country for the period 2017 to 2021. What is the most likely cause of the change in unemployment? So you can see that in 2017, the unemployment rate was around 8.1%. In 2021, the unemployment rate is around 5.5%. So let's look at the most likely cause of change. A says a reduction in government expenditure, which is incorrect. You need to increase government expenditure in order to boost the economy, because only then when you improve, let's say the government expenditure increases and they spend it on infrastructure, they spend it on education, they spend it on they spend it on education and infrastructure, which improves the country's development by actually allowing more workers to be hired to produce these forms of infrastructure. This would allow for employment to increase. So A is incorrect, because if you were to reduce it, then your unemployment would actually increase. So for B, because of the fact that there is a reduction in interest rate, this actually results in higher money supply. When there's higher money supply, it would result in people increasing investment consumption, therefore resulting in change of unemployment. So B is correct. And C, a reduction in investment by firms. If you were to reduce your investment, this will result in an increase in unemployment because people will no longer need so many workers to begin with. So C is incorrect, and D, a slowdown in growth would also result in unemployment to increase. So therefore, answer is 23. What is the definition of liquidity? Liquidity is basically the ability for you to convert your assets into cash. Okay, so the higher the liquidity, the easier you can actually convert your assets into cash. So A says the ability of the foreign exchange market to buy foreign currency, which is incorrect. B, the support a central bank provides for commercial banks, which is incorrect. And C, the ease with which an asset can be converted into cash, this is correct. And D, the reaction of governments to a global financial crisis. This is not liquidity, so the one with the definition of liquidity would be C. 24 will decrease if an open economy experiences a positive output gap. So if let's say the open economy experiences this thing, A, the general price level would not decrease because it's a positive output gap. All right, the general price level would increase. B, the import spending would increase as well. And C, spare capacity would decrease. So it's correct. And D, wage rates would increase as well. So not only does your general price level increase, your wage rate increase, your import spending will also increase, but your spare capacity would decrease because the output gap is positive. All right. And then 25, which statement does not correctly characterize the monetarist view of the way in which the economy operates? So A, inflation is always caused by increases in the money supply in the long run. So monetarist view is that inflation does not necessarily have to be caused by increases in the money supply, so A is not correct. And B, the long run average supply curve is vertical in shape. This is not what the monetarist mentioned. C says the velocity of circulation of money is highly unstable. This is correct. And D, radius are flexible both hours and hours, which is incorrect. So answer is C. This is just a monetarist view. You can just so basically just what the monetarists would have to say about how the economy operates. So in this case, they mentioned that the velocity of circulation of money is highly unstable. Okay, for question 26, in the economy, the marginal propensity to consume is 0.2, the marginal propensity to save is 0.3, the marginal propensity to tax is 0.3 as well, and the marginal propensity to import is 0.2 at all levels of income. And what would be the most likely consequence of an increase in government expenditure of 1,000 million? Right. So first, take 1,000 million, multiply with the multipliers, which is 1 over MPS plus MPT plus MPI, which is 1,000 million times 1 over 0.3 times 2 plus 0.2, which gets you 1,000 million times 1 divided by 0.8. So if you do that, you get, if let's say we take 1 divided by 0.8, we'll get 1.25. So 1,000 million times 1.25, you get 1,250 million. So 1,250 million, let's say I just take all the numbers and I calculate. So if I were to do that for marginal propensity to import, I multiply marginal propensity to import, I'll get 250 million. So my import expenditure would increase by 250 million, which is not listed here in A or B. So A, B is wrong. But tax revenue, on the other hand, I take 1,250, I times 3 divided by 10, I will get 375 million. So tax revenue would increase by 375 million and not 75 million. So answer is D. Okay. Question 27. A developing low-income economy is heavily dependent on the production of primary products. A multinational car manufacturing company invests in the country and builds a new factory. And what will not be a long-lasting benefit of the company's investment in the developing economy? Okay, what will not be a long-lasting benefit for the economy, which means that it's not bringing advantage to that particular economy. So A, it says the company introduces new technology to the economy, which means it is bringing a long-lasting benefit. So A is not the answer. And B, the company provides diversification of production for the economy, which is also not the answer because it is indeed a long-lasting benefit. And C, the company provides skills trainings for local workers, which also is a long-lasting benefit because the workers now gain insight and also gain education and technical skills for that particular product. So C is not correct. So let's look at D. The company purchases non-renewable local construction materials for the factory, which results in the country's non-renewable materials to decrease, and in the long run, this would result in the non-renewable materials to actually decrease in its amount. So D is not correct. D is the answer. It is not a long-lasting benefit. So yep, D is the answer. So for 27 is D. And 28, an economy adopts an expansionary monetary policy to boost employment. A result of this policy is that the consumer price rises at an accelerating rate, and which curve could represent this? Now, in CAIE textbook, what we learn would be Laffer curve, Lorentz curve, and Phillips curve. The Kuznets curve is not it's not common. A could be easily ruled out. It's not the Laffer curve as well, and it's also not the Lorentz curve. So the answer would be D, the Phillips curve. Question 29, a government wishes to increase economic efficiency in the country. It raises the real income tax, which leads to the emigration of high-earning skilled workers that the country needs. And how would this outcome be described? Okay, now the government wishes to increase economic efficiency, but then this results in emigration of high-earning skilled workers. So let's say I have decent skills. Let's say I'm a programmer, but for some reason, because of my income, let's say I earn more than 20,000 ringgit per month, I will have to pay an income tax of maybe 15 or 20%. And I'm not happy with this outcome, so I end up moving to another country, let's say Singapore or the United Kingdom, where the income tax could be 10%. So in this case, this is a form of government failure. So A and B is wrong. It could be either C or D. Now, even though it's a government failure, it is not a market failure because it's the government that wishes to increase economic efficiency, and it's not because of the market actually failing these people. So C is incorrect, and it does not have negative externality. So answer is D. Question 30, an economy is operating at full employment. Which policy is most likely to lead to an increase in real national output without an increase in the rate of inflation? Okay, so this has to be a supply side policy. So A, additional spending on subsidies is a demand side policy. Government expenditure, so this is under fiscal policy, so A is incorrect. And B, the central bank introduces quantitative easing. This is not part of supply side policy. This is part of demand side, so B is not correct. And C, the labor market reforms result in increased output per hour worked. So that means that increasing the amount, increasing the aggregate supply in the economy. So C is a supply side policy. So C is the answer. And D, the government reduces income tax rates, which is a fiscal policy. So D is a supply side policy, which is incorrect. So answer is C. All right. So this is the end of this paper. I hope you find this helpful. Do share this out to other people who may need help with A2 economics. I will see you again in the next video. Till then, this is qiphyedu.